today you are trying to do anything, you will have like 5,000 pop-ups, right? There is somebody buzzing you on WhatsApp, there is some mail popping up on your email, and there are tasks that keep chasing you, right? But you have to develop a focus, and that focus makes the difference today. For a 30-minute presentation, I would spend like 8, 10, maybe 15 hours, right, preparing, right? And I can tell you that like 10 slides that I present to the CIOs, 8 slides are same, right, which I present to everyone. Other thing which I learned, right, over a period and in some training programs that I attended, that there are 30% of the orders which will come your way no matter what you do, right? As because of the brand image, because of the equity, you will win those 30. The smart salespeople, they focus on 40, which can be converted, right?
Interesting.
And those 40 can actually take you to a very big number, or they can actually drag you to below your targets.
Corporate life is just not about what the textbooks or the leadership books teach you, right? Welcome to Corporate India Unfiltered, where we will have discussions with senior leaders, real stories, real mistakes, what they have done, minus all the filters. We would learn from what they have discussed at coffee tables or outside the office. And I'm sure it will be of great value to you. If you find value in this, please do like, subscribe, and share with someone who is navigating the corporate life just like you. Friends, our guest for today is Samir Bhatt. Samir has 25 plus years of experience in sales, primarily B2B sales and technology functions. He's got diversified experience of working with very small companies to large companies like Tech Pacific, Wipro, Thomson Reuters, and now he's with Gartner for the last 4 years. During this last 25 years, of course, he's got a lot of sales awards to his credit within the technology domain, working for partners, working for distributors, and working for it. Thank you, Samir. Thanks for joining this podcast.
Thank you, Romit. Thank you for inviting me on this podcast. And I must say that, this is my first experience with, doing podcast. So I'm hoping that will be an interesting one for you as well as
Just feel free,
viewers.
because our whole objective, Samir, in this podcast is primarily to share our learnings, right? Over the period of years, what we have learned the hard way, right? And that's the whole objective. So whatever comes to you, and as the name of the podcast says, right, unfiltered. So please feel free, be casual.
And this reminds me of like a book that I'm reading, Skin in the Game. This is by one of my favorite authors. His name is Nassim Nicholas Taleb.
Okay.
And he's been a practitioner in the hedge fund market, and then he's also a researcher and a philosopher. After doing 20 years of hedge funding, he's got into this, and he writes very beautifully. So one of the things he says is that, one who talks should do, and one who does only should talk. And that is why, I thought I am qualified to take this podcast, because I'm up 25 years
Of course.
selling, and selling in difficult markets, good markets, bad markets. And also, I mean, there are a lot of things which so there are two reasons. One, I think that, I can do this podcast. And second is uh, that, there is a lot of learning, right? When you are on field, you practice certain things, you learn. And sometimes it takes 25 or 30 years to learn, right?
Yeah.
And necessarily you would have thought that, okay, if I would have known this day one, maybe I would have been more effective. So maybe the objective is to see if I can share learnings, and that could cut down some of the learnings for the people who are watching this podcast. So with that, I thought, let me accept your invitation, and I can and see what I can share with you.
That's the whole objective. Since you mentioned learnings, while we are on this topic, uh, anything which you want to share right now, any mistakes which you did early in your career, maybe 20 years back, and you think that things would have been different, and
Yeah, I think the first thing, I thought when I started my career in the corporate side, I thought that customers are buying the best technology available in the market, right? So I always thought that if you have a product which is very powerful than the competitors and which is priced lower, right, than the competitor, then you are the winner. And that was the mindset when I joined 3Com. So I think one of the mistakes I realized in a very if I look back is that when I started into sales, I used to think that you can just be having a good product which is technically better than your competitor and price lower than your competitor. Now,
Product is the king. That's what.
yeah,
all
product
thought.
is a king. You have a good pricing, a superior product, and why would you lose? Right? If you give anyone a choice that this is a product which is superior quality and a lower price, what is the reason to fail? And that was a big realization that I used to work with 3Com at that time, which is now, of course, acquired by HP. And our closest competitor was Cisco, though we used to think they are closest, but they used to hold 95% market share, right? And I used to sell and I used to go and position. And then over a period, I realized that, why Cisco is selling is not because of the product superiority, right? They had a ecosystem in place. And what do I mean by ecosystem, right? Ecosystem means that when you sell a product, you are not only selling a product, right? Cisco had almost 50,000, 20,000 engineers on their certified, they had a Cisco certification with them, right? So once customer has bought the product, he has not to worry about implementation, right? Whereas 3Com didn't even have 10 certified service years on that time, right?
Yeah.
So a very strong service delivery network.
Something similar to Maruti, I think. Maruti also succeeded primarily because of this.
Absolutely. So it had, that kind of a network. It had a very superior research capabilities. Like I remember a case, we used to sell to Persistent Technology, used to be a very big, a customer of 3Com. And we kept Cisco away for a very long time. Until one day, when a 8-stack switch of Persistent Technologies with some, I think about 500 developers started resetting.
Okay.
And you can imagine if there are coders who are coding and stack restarts, right? And then everybody was like, oh, why this is happening? And we escalated. And we never understood where the problem is, right? After 2 months, they had to, live with the problem. After 2 months, we figured out that Acton was the original equipment manufacturer who had manufactured these switches, and they had specified a limitation of only 4 switches can be stacked in a rack. And we were stacking 8. And guess what? We lost that account. So it is, then I learned it hard way that it is not only about product alone, it is
a lot of things
about ecosystem, right? And once you have that ecosystem, it's very difficult to break that ecosystem. So that was like a big learning for me, that it's not technology and price alone, but it's the ecosystem.
Yeah. And you've been into B2B sales, right?
Yeah.
Is it because you enjoy B2B sales, or you think your core competency lies in?
I think, when I started in sales, and that was way back in 1997, I aspired to become a software developer. Fine. Because that time everybody wanted to go to US, right? I did my diploma in in computers from AppTech in a private institute, but I was always a commerce student. So very difficult to get into software engineering job, because that time, me's were preferred over anything else. So I went for an interview, and the owner spoke with me for like 20 minutes, and he said, Samir, I think your aptitude is very suitable for sales. So you need not, get into technical stuff. And I have an opening for you. Why don't you join sales?
So it was an accident which worked very well, right?
So I don't know, it was an accident at that time. and then, since that day, I've always been
I'm sure you're
sales.
great. Yeah.
So that's how my journey started.
So are there any skills which you see different now in terms of sales skills, core skills, sales skills, like which are very relevant and very important for the new people who are getting into sales right now, which was not so much, say, when you started 20 years back, apart from technology and all that. Yeah.
See, I think basics of sales do not change, right? You have to create a win-win situation for client. If you have to sell for years together, right? And go back to your client who you would have dealt with in 25 years back, you have to create a win-win. So I think there are a lot of principles and frameworks of sales do not change in my view. They remain consistent and I am not seeing them changing, right? Of course, one thing which has changed significantly is the knowledge, acquisition of knowledge, right? When I used to sell in the year 2000, 2003, that time internet service providers just got a license, right? The whole segment was opened up and private players started receiving licenses for becoming an internet service provider. And I used to sell bandwidth, I used to sell networking equipment. And the difficulty I used to find is, how does the equipment look like, right? If you are selling, say, a fiber connectivity, how does a fiber look? What kind of SC connectors, ST connectors. So acquiring knowledge used to be very difficult, right? Because you have to really work very closely with an engineer. Google was not that prominent at that time. There was no knowledge base. So acquiring knowledge, I thought, was very difficult at that time. I used to read books of networking essentials, like a huge book to make sense of what I am selling, and which I think is not a core skill now, right? You Google anything, right? And you do charge it. Top of that, we had all this generative AI things coming up, right? So that is not the core competency now, right? Having a knowledge is not a core competency. To my mind, core competency is to focus, right? Because today you are trying to do anything, you will have 5,000 pop-ups, right? There is somebody buzzing you on WhatsApp. There is some mail popping up on your email. And there are tasks that keep chasing you, right? But you have to develop a focus, and that focus makes the difference today. And that's what I believe is the core skill which is required, is focus. And if you are able to focus, you will get where you want to get.
And the basics like relationships and all obviously matters.
Yeah,
Today.
that's that goes true for your life as well, right? I mean, now why sales, right?
Yeah.
If you have to progress, and I mean, let me quote something what I read in that effective habits of by Ravan Covey. Yeah. So he says that when you start, you are dependent, like you are a small kid, you are dependent on people, right? Then as you grow, you become independent, right? And then you aspire to do everything by yourself. But when you want to go and travel a distance, you need to have interdependencies, right? And that will take you to places, right? If you are just dependent or independent, it will only make you successful. But if you want to really succeed in life, then you need to create interdependencies. And I would think that in any career, uh, even sales, you should be giver.
Okay.
See, because have you seen salespeople, right? So they get a great meeting, right? And they reach a CIO and they will say, "So, sir, what is your problem?"
Why?
And it is like a manual, right? It's like, why would I tell you my problem?
Exactly.
So, so I always believe that in relationship, you have to be a giver and then be a taker. Because we are taught, right, in sales, understand client problem. When you're not understanding client problem, and then you go good and for yet say,
Ask.
sir, what problem? Arey, I have no problem. And why do I tell you what problem I have?
So as per you, so now since we are in this, for all these for all the viewers who are sales guys and want to do, what what should be a good conversation starter when you do a CXO level meeting, right? I mean, what is it?
Okay, so I also learned it hard way. I was also like a prescription manager, right? Going and not knowing what we speak. Very initial days in my career, I used to go and talk like some blah 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 with CIOs and very senior people. I will like not prepare. I will just reach there and try to create a conversation. Now I was able to build a decent relationship, but I couldn't create enough value in their eyes, right? So as I moved forward in my career, I realized that all CIOs, right, they are working for an organization, and that organization has hired them to contribute to three or four things, right? It could be growth in revenue, it could be cost reduction, it could be risk avoidance, or it could be penetrating the market, right? So there are like certain objectives that every organization has. And while, as a salesperson, you are like, for example, just selling one laptop, okay, and nothing big, right? But you connect that to the priority that organization is chasing, right? Now, if you are selling one laptop and customer, meaning the customer is hiring, say 10,000 people to grow their certain line of business, then eventually this laptop is actually contributing to the growth, right? And and that is the conversation if you have with CIO, saying that how your product
Will help them achieve
achieve some
their KRAs, their results.
their organization KRAs, right? Because ultimately, if a CIO is undertaking AI initiative, right, he is doing two, three things. Either he is improving the customer experience for his organization, or he is reducing the cost by bringing efficiencies, right? So he is really not buying a AI product. He is buying something which will impact the uh, core KRA or the objective of the organization. And that is where I think, if you and my key to CIO meetings or a CEO meetings is to prepare. For a 30-minute presentation, I would spend like 8, 10, maybe 15 hours, right, preparing, right? And and I can tell you that, like, 10 slides that I present to the CIOs, 8 slides are same, right, which I present to everyone. But those 2 slides, where I bring all of this together and tell them that how my organization or my product is absolutely hitting your, core objectives, that wows the CIOs. And there is no exception to that.
And now you one can use AI as an enabler for preparation, right? I mean, you just tell ChatGPT, I'm meeting so and so person, so in the industry, help me prepare notes.
Yeah,
I think there you are, right?
absolutely. I think, see, if you are talking to a listed company and a CIO of a listed company, preparation is very easy.
Yes.
Because if you go through the analyst calls, right, every CIOs, not CIOs, but CEOs, they have analyst calls, right, every quarter after the results. And those are big source of learning, right? There are annual reports, right, which are like 500,000 pages. Now you can put that annual report in a Copilot and just say that, give me 5 focus areas for this particular organization, and give me a 5 areas where they are in trouble, right? And same thing you can do with analysts, right? If you have heard analyst calls, they will say, oh, why your margins are falling, right? And because you are a listed company,
Yes.
you have to
Yeah,
answer, right?
yeah.
You have no choice but to answer. So you get lot of those areas where the CIOs are feeling pain, their organization is feeling the pain, and then you link that back to the capabilities that your organization has, and then you take that picture to the CIO.
50% job is done.
Yeah,
Or maybe more.
you will set up lot of your credibility, right? Because I have like presented to the CEOs, and they will say, oh, this is how you see our organization. And they would want to reserve that slide, right, for themselves.
Great. Yeah.
Because they think, yeah, this is beautifully captured in a very small format.
So you understand my problem.
Absolutely. And I think that and that helps you set credibility with a very senior folks, right? Because senior folks have like 30 minutes, 20 minutes that they give you. And if you keep talking about product, they are not interested. Right. So you have to connect the dots and do this.
Have you faced a scenario where there are multiple stakeholders? It is not only one CIO, and they have different set of priorities, and then a sales guy is like confused, इसको map करे, उसको map करे, इसके बाद जाएगा तो बोलेगा why didn't you come to me, उसके बाद जाएगा, and typically I think it's a common scenario, right?
Yeah. I mean, when
How do you address it?
we in a corporate, complex, scenarios, large customers, this is all the time this happens, right? Now, if I have to give you like a one-liner answer, chase the person who has budget. So figure out who will lose the purse strings to fund your product. Now, that is a very short and a very straight answer.
Okay.
Other thing is like when you are dealing with, multiple stakeholders, one thing I've realized is and there are many things with which you can handle, but one is try to be transparent with people, right? And 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 keep everyone informed, right, of why you are doing and what you are doing. Because sometimes we try to hide, right, saying, okay, I vet this guy, but I will not tell this guy, and then I'll do this. But also, sales is a very I should say not a engineering job, right, where you tight this. If you have to tighten the screw, you move it towards the right, and then if you have to loosen the screw, you move towards the left. Sometimes, sales, there is no golden rule, right? Because
Yeah.
what works in one customer may not work in other customer, right? But what I have realized is that as long as you keep things transparent, it will help you, and focus on people who have budget, much that you can drive, right? Because they also understand. See, one thing is that in this whole politics, you are just a partner or a supplier who is supplying a product, right? And you don't have much control, right? So in sometimes, depending on which case it is, you have to tell customer that, what control do I have, right, on your decision.
Be transparent. I think like
So I think
transparent.
my suggestion is
Meet everyone and be transparent.
meet everyone, be transparent, and budget. Focus on where the budget is.
One interesting point you touched, sales is more of engineering. Over the period of years, we have always read sales is an art. Some say sales is science. What is your experience? Or it is a combination?
Yeah, I think, in my mind, it is combination. Because like you might ask the same question, right? But the way you ask,
Yes.
makes all the difference. So in my view, sales, you have to have a framework, because if you don't follow a framework, you can go all over, right? But I've seen that like two sales people asking same question to the customer, right? And customer responding very differently to both these gentlemen, right? And that happens, in my view, due to two, three things. One is, what is your credibility that you have established with the opposite party, right? You see, you can ask anything, okay? You can absolutely ask anything from customer,
Yeah.
or from your friend as well, right? But you need to know, right?
How much?
How much can you ask, right? And that line nobody can teach you, right?
I think that's where there are some sales guy who asks close-ended questions, and hence they get one word answers. And there are some guys who ask open-ended questions, so they get all the information what they need, right?
Absolutely. And I think the other thing is that, and that also brings me to the question, how do you build credibility, right, with the customer? I think first and foremost thing to build credibility is to, be open and give right information. Because sometimes you want to hide, right? Like typical sales, right? You don't tell two, three things to clients saying, okay, to nikal jayega, we'll just manage it. So there is no harm in saying, but how you say it, right?
How-
So that is one. So one is, build that trust, that where customer knows that, okay, if Samir is saying something, he can be fully trusted. And second thing, okay, and which, is a very different, my take is very different. Then if you want to build a credibility with customer, then have relationship 2, 3 levels above the person whom you are trying to sell. Okay, right? Because moment you are able to have a great relationship with not the user, but 2 levels above, they automatically start, thinking that no, this guy has some, credibility, and hence my boss, maybe my boss's boss is also listening to him.
But doesn't it work counter effects sometimes that अरे अच्छा तो उनको जाके मिला तभी उन्हीं को मिलो मतलब
So I think
I think it happens.
yeah, so like that's where the art comes in, like that, not always you try to do that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Knowing.
and I also try to do this in a very positive way, right? So many times, I am like, I tell my customers, right, that why don't you take me to your senior, right? And what are you trying to so, right?
Excellent.
And I will help you, achieve your agenda. Because see, everybody is trying to achieve certain goals.
What's in for me? I think you just have to address the what's in for me.
Absolutely. And see, everybody is trying to achieve certain goals, right? And are you enabler for him or her? If they see you as an enabler, they will take you to places, right? But if they see that, you are a distractor
Yeah.
for them, then, you will be limited.
And I think art and science is also in terms of qualification of the lead because I have seen over the period of years I'm sure you would have seen, right?
Yep.
There are certain sales guys who are top performers. They don't work as much, but they are still top performers. And there are people who work multiple. They work endless nights, but still the results are not so high. I think that is also an house, right?
I think maybe we can have like one separate session. You come numerous times to the pod, because I think this is one of my favorite topics on prospecting. And I always say that, the successful people are those who do effective things, right? Rather than just doing things effectively, right? Because if you go to any, trainings, they tell you that, okay, or any typical, sales process, they will say you should first understand the need, then you should do a product demo, then you should do a qualification presentation,
Yeah.
then you should understand budget, then you should make 5 follow-up calls and whatnot, right? Now my question is, do you need to invest so much time, right? And let me give you an example. So I used to work for Thomson Reuters, and we were the biggest supplier of financial data, right? Including the live feeds that you see on CNBC or, TV 18 and various other channels. You see those stickers, right, where the live price is flashing off the scripts. Now we used to have like at least 2 calls a day, and I used to handle that product, which used to be called Thomson Reuters Knowledge Direct. And I used to get like 2 calls, 3 calls a day saying, "Oh, I need, live feeds." And I know that if he has to purchase a live feed, and this is like a nifty price that you see, nifty 50 price.
Okay.
Now that single ticker, if you need in real time, you have to pay 40 lakh rupees a year to National Stock Exchange, right? Not to Thomson Reuters, National Stock Exchange. Then they permit Thomson Reuters to display that on your, television or whatever portal that you are running. Now, like I used to take a judgment with the voice saying, is there any credibility to this, right? Because there is a lead which is coming, and then you are expected to qualify, present, do whatever those 7 steps. And I used to just quote a price saying this is minimum 1 crore rupees. Are you interested? Then they will ask 5 questions, then I will educate them and I will do my CSR bit. But I will not put that in system. I will not waste a single time on those kind of leads, right? Then I work for another organization, right? Where I know that, I can't sell anything below CIO, right? Or to a CEO, right? And then there are like, again, like multiple leads, right? They just clog. So what do you do with those leads, right? So in my view, you have to focus on doing effective things, because even generative AI, right? It will tell you how to effectively write an email, right? But it will not tell you who should you write the email to, right?
The right message.
Otherwise, you can write a very beautiful email to a prospect which has no money, right? So I think prospecting, in my view,
Very important.
plays a very, very important role.
Also, I think you should, I think some successful people, what they do is they also filter out, like the customers select vendors and then they filter. I think what they also do, number of leads, and
So
then they filter out.
another thing which I learned, right, over a period and in some training programs that I attended, that there are 30% of the orders which will come your way no matter what you do, right?
Okay.
As because of the brand image, because of the equity, you will win those 30. There are other 30 which you will always lose no matter what you do, right? Maybe you don't have a product for that market, maybe you are outpriced, maybe there is a very strong presence of another competitor in that account. So there are 30 which you will always lose. So smart people, smart salespeople, they focus on 40, which can be converted, right?
Interesting.
And those 40 can actually take you to a very big number, or they can actually drag you to below your targets. So I think that is another thing, I've started developing, saying, how do you narrow down on those 40 which will swing the year for you.
So all these deals, right? This kind of deals and many more in B2B typically have very long sales cycles, right? I think especially any B2B deal is around 3 to 9 months maybe.
Yeah,
And how do you keep people motivated during the entire time? Or what are the things to do, things not to do during that cycle for salespeople?
Yeah, I think, see, first thing is that, like I said, prospecting, right? You have to prospect right. Because if you prospect wrong and then you spend 2 years or 1 year on that deal, you are setting yourself for disaster.
But you will need to, right? You need to be engaged with the customer from the start, or else somebody else would
So,
do
so
that.
you would engage with them, but you would continue to check, right? So I always say that,
Time allocation, how much time you should.
yeah, and I always say that, you have to be in touch with customer, right? Because what you think today, you think differently tomorrow. Like today morning, I want to buy Apple,
Yeah.
and tomorrow I think no, it's just too much waste of money, right? So if I'm able to so I think keeping in touch over a very long sales cycle
Helps.
and creatively going back, see, because sometimes these deals are stalled. And another thing that I learned in one of the trainings was, who is the biggest competitor of you, right? If you are a salesperson, who is the biggest competitor, right? It is not your nearest competitor who is your biggest competitor. Your biggest competitor is a status quo. Okay. Most of the orders, you don't lose to competition, you lose to the status quo of the customer, right? Because customer is dragging his decision, right? And this you can like relate to anything, right? If you have a habit, right, of getting up only at 8, and you want to switch and start getting up at 6, how difficult is that change, right? And same thing, right? So they are on a particular technology, they are doing something,
Going to be
they don't want to disrupt, right? So last thing that anybody wants to do is to disrupt and get into new. So challenging the status quo uh, is a key aspect of running very large, long sales cycles, right? Because if it is a competition,
and it will take a lot of your time.
typically, if it is a situation where, say, for example, a new building is coming and you are trying to sell a networking, and building will come and people will come, right? So their sales cycle is defined because there is a very clear driving need, right? There is a clear driving need, right? But there are situations where there is no need, right? You are
Messages identify the need.
identify the need and
And
creative
work
go
on it
back.
accordingly.
Yeah, creatively go back to the customer to push him away from the status quo. So how do you move from the status quo, right? That's a question. Because
Yeah.
like if you were to, so like if somebody tells you that, Romit, why don't you start walking 1 hour every day? This is going to make you healthy, right? And you will, you will lose fat, all of that, right? And you will say, okay, maybe I will do it,
Later.
1 week later, 2 week later, 2 months
Next
later.
month. Next month.
But imagine if I come and tell you that, Romit, you will die tomorrow if you don't start walking today. And then you will start walking today.
Prioritizing.
And there is a study, right?
Okay.
Which also I learned in one of the trainings, is that your mind wants to go away 3 times faster from the negative influences. Okay. So when customer is having a status quo, you have to create that urgency, right? Because see, today, anybody who is employed, right? You, me, everyone, right? We are very less risk takers, right? So somebody who is employed, he's not really worried about getting his next promotion. He's worried about saving his job, right? So most of the decisions are taken ensuring that nothing happens to that job or their job, right? So they want to take a very safe decisions.
Right.
So unless you take him to a territory where he thinks that, his existence will be in crisis, he would not move from where he is.
True. So tell me, now since you have been in this sales for last 25 years, if there is a time machine and you go back, say 20 years, what is it that you would change about yourself, your sales methodologies, some mistakes which you would have done, which you think I should have not done, I should have corrected, or at least the new sales guy should not do?
I think, see, first and foremost, in my view, is that I would have identified the industry. Okay. See, because for you to be successful in sales or any industry or any profession, you have to be in a right industry, right? So you have to be in a right industry which is growing. Because if you get into an industry which is not growing,
True.
there will be a struggle. Now you choose an industry.
Selling is always going to be difficult.
So you choose an industry which is growing, but you choose a player which is struggling, right? They are making losses or they don't have light product proposition. So how do you grow? So any new guy who is trying to get into sales, or to myself, if I am trying to do it today, is to identify industry which is growing, which has a growth, which is in the growth phase. Then identify leader, right? Don't work with, third, fourth, fifth number. Try to, and obviously this is if you have a choice, or if you are able to create a scenario where leader is ready to hire you, or you are trying to find a network to get to a leader, right? So try to work with a leader, because working with leader is absolutely different experience. And like I said, right, I worked with a very small organization which used to like have a turnover of like 20 lakh rupees when I started my career. Then I worked for a company which had 5,000 crore turnover. So the difference is, when you work with leader, they are leader because they are doing things right. And they figured out the formula to be leader. They are not leaders just by chance. So try to get to a leader.
That helps you to win faster rather than...
That helps you to win faster. That helps you to know how things are working. And you see it from a very different dimension. So that would be my advice.
And how about sales tools, CRMs, or sales people are generally, if you ask them one thing which they don't like to do, and I'm sure common answer is CRM and all those sales too, right?
Yeah, I think I believe that dashboards are for the management, right? And it's an unfortunate part that most of the dashboards are created for the management, while those are fed by the salespeople. So why salespeople don't like dashboard, right? Because it is just not telling them anything that they don't know. Because they are feeding the data,
And then
which they already know, and then somebody else is looking at that data and telling them what to do. So
based on that, reviews are happening, right? And the reviews are...
I think, see, there is a concept of lagging indicators and leading indicators, right? So all dashboards most of them focus on lagging indicators. That, oh, your funnel is so low, qualified funnel is less, you are just making 4 meetings, oh, this pipeline is not looking good, so on and so forth. This is all a lagging indicators. Whereas for a successful salesperson, he has to focus on a leading indicator, right? Because if you have to deliver a great funnel, you have to figure out how to generate that funnel, right? And what does is that tool contributing in terms of generating the funnel? And I'm not talking about those leads, right, which you have to discard, right? But is it something that is helping you to generate leads, build your own capabilities? So that is one side of the story, right? But I think it is important for salespeople to also maintain these dashboards, right? And I'll tell you why. And I learned it like very late in my career. Because see, there is a senior person sitting at an Asia Pac level, right? And there are like 100 people selling across Asia Pac, or maybe 300 people selling across Asia Pacific. And that guy, how would he know what Samir Bhatt is doing, right? It's only through the dashboards. So why, these are not great things, but keeping them up to date is also important, because you don't realize, right? But your measurement is those dashboards.
And many times you also get some visibility out of it. You get some new thoughts when you look at, though you know everything is known, but when you actually look at dashboards, it kind of gives more idea, right?
I think that is also true, that sometimes, like, once in a while, if you step back and try to look at your own data, you might get new insights. But I broadly believe that a good sales guy should just know the pulse of his territory without looking at anything. Because if you don't know that what is happening in your territory, and for which you need to look at the dashboard, then you don't have the pulse.
Since you touched upon funnel, what is a good funnel? Is it still 3x? I mean, few years back, we typically spoke about the idea of your funnel should be ideally 3x.
See,
Does that still remain, or you think?
See, it actually, in my view, anything which is 4 times your target
Okay.
is a good funnel, in my view. Then see, the question is not about 4 times or 3 times, right?
Qualified funnel.
Yeah. Question is, how do you qualify? And what funnel do you think is a qualified funnel, right? Because, so I worked in a situation where there were only two major players, right? Thomson Reuters and Bloomberg. And I knew that if it is to do with FX, foreign exchange related sales, Gartner, meaning Thomson Reuters, will always win, right? So even like, if there are 7 good cases, I would say that, okay, easily I will close 5.
Because then
Because there is no competition, right? But if I was working for Wipro, for example,
yeah,
and especially in PSUs, I don't know how much big funnel will we have.
what is a long sales cycle?
Yeah. Then then you are in a PSU setup where there is a reverse auction happening, so you are not comfortable with even 10x the funnel. So I think it's a very subjective thing. So depending on which organization you work with, you have to see that your funnel, see, if it becomes very big, how do you focus, right? Because and you so the other parameter which could help you is to understand that how many deals in past have taken you to the number.
So do your own analysis.
Every industry would have, or every company will have a average deal size. Say for example 1 crore, and if you are carrying a 10 crore number, if the average deal ticket is 1, maybe you need to close 8, right, with a plus minus of something. So if you have to have a good 8 closures in a year, and then look at what has happened in past, and look at 8 versus is 24 good, or 32 good. I think that's a good way to look at scientifically that what kind of funnel.
So you touched upon reverse auctions, right?
Yeah.
And now this is something which typically most salespeople dread, right? Because then they feel that this is now pure luck. What is your take, since you're the right guy who has done a lot of reverse
Yeah,
auction?
let me tell you in Hindi, right? जब आप रिवर्स ऑक्शन में हारते हो तो आपको दुख होता है, ओके? मगर आप जब रिवर्स ऑक्शन में जीतते हो तो आपको बहुत दुख होता है. Said. And why I tell you this is because you don't know who is, bidding, and you keep on bidding in
Keep on losing.
excitement,
Ah,
and then
you don't know how much you have lost.
and you end up, quoting at a price which is absolutely unaffordable. And I have done such reverse auctions where I have lost money in penalties, in margins, everywhere. So that is one thing from a vendor standpoint. But it is actually a lose-lose proposition, right? Because as a customer, you are not getting the right services, right? And I have seen orders getting, into trouble, execution getting delayed. So in my view, reverse auction is not a great thing to do, neither for customers nor for the sellers.
But what should I do? Customer says I want to do reverse auctions. Sales guy should quit the saying that I not
Thinking
contest, or
they should just have one price asked from both the vendors, and it could be like online. They can do the discovery online, but that should be only one single price quoted, because in the reverse auction, then you and I've seen like 180 crore deal getting closed for 130 crore, and I've heard customers saying 10 crore deal got closed at 1 crore. So it's a complete madness. So
it's also a mandate from a PSU perspective now, right? I think above certain value they have to.
I think there is some mandate, but I think it's a collective thing, because it is creating a lose-lose situation for everybody involved. So I mean, that's my very strong view on reverse options.
Okay. And how about salespeople? What do you feel is the state of salespeople today? Given that there is so much of overload, there is AI, there is technology updates very fast. There are multiple stakeholders to map. There are so many things to do. Reverse auction, you are saying no. They have to qualify. So are salespeople really working very hard, or there are few sales who are hardly working? What's the kind of scenario?
Yeah, so I always tell that, when you are in sales, you can either be free all the time, right? Because there are very few products for which you are sitting in office and customers keep calling you saying, please come and sell me, please come and sell me, I want to buy, please sell. So either you can be very, very free, or you may not find any time, right? So depending on, where you are, uh, my ritual is to, like, if I'm only like managing sales and not managing the revenue, then my ritual is to every day morning go and open all the opportunities that I have,
Okay.
and start my day with that, right? I open all the opportunities in the beginning of the day, and I look at all the opportunities, note down my actions, and then I reach out to those opportunities, and then obviously create more, right? So in my view, either a sales guy can find work for himself or can be free for the whole day. So I think one more thing, which I have learned to be effective, right, in sales is earlier in my career, I used to think that, if you know something, why should you go and talk to the most, top performing individual in the organization? But I realized that that's not the right approach, right? You have to learn from the people who have been successful in your own organization. So you are learning and looking at this, podcast could give you some tips and tricks, right? But why do you ignore a person who is sitting next to you and he is breaking all records in your organization? Go speak with him or her and learn what is he doing differently. Don't just exclude him or her saying that, oh, his territory is better, he's lucky, he's got some good customer. Just don't say that, right? Because everybody who is delivering numbers are doing it with some formula, right? And that formula is not known to you. And the closest and the best learning you can have is from your own peers. So don't discount that.
Just because of your ego, just go out of your shell and approach.
Absolutely,
And,
absolutely.
and people are generally eager.
Yeah, and you will get a very practical advice, right? This might sound like a theory to you when we give you a lot of tips and tricks, but I think when you listen to your own organization, that will be the closest and the most practical advice you will get.
Well said. Thanks, Samir. That was really interesting conversation we had. So for the viewers, let me kind of summarize a basic funda 4x qualified funnel, right? Not just funnel, but a qualified funnel. Focus on the 40%, as Samir rightly said, right? 30% will come, 30% will not come, but 40% will come based on your efforts. So focus on the 40%. Focus on doing effective things. Use AI and CRM as enablers. Don't see it as a threat, right? They are there to help you achieve more and more, and of course, to win. And multiple stakeholders, go ahead and map everyone, but ensure that you maintain transparency. And as Samir referred to Stephen Covey, interdependency is the key. So all the best, and I am sure we had a great these things. If you think that this episode was valuable, please do like, subscribe, and share with anyone who you think can benefit from this. Thank you.
Thank you.